Hey guys, welcome to another bonus episode of the Dudes and Dads podcast. Coming at you today with an idea that I've been thinking about for quite a while now. And that idea is leaving a legacy. What does it mean? How does it apply to me? What does a legacy have to do with anything? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. First, I want to thank you guys for being a Patreon supporter of our show. Without you guys, we could not continue to do this. So this episode is for you, our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for what you do for our show. Again, we couldn't do this without you. So here we go, guys. What is a legacy? Well, let's find out. The legacy is defined as passed from generation to the next, from one generation to the next. It's a legacy. It's what people think of you. It's how people remember you. Many times we think of a legacy as being something financial, though. You know, like, hey, my grandpa and grandma passed me on this financial sum of money. It's their legacy. Or, you know, so-and-so passed on and made this huge donation to this organization so that they could continue doing what they're doing. That's their legacy. Buildings get named after people for their legacy because they've donated money. Well, so my grandparents have moved, and this is kind of actually what's got me thinking about this lately, is the fact that my grandparents are getting older, and they are, well, let's just say that they needed to move out of their house and then move into a place that's going to give them more care. So their physical possessions have been sold, most of them. Some of them they took with them to the new location. But for the most part, they don't have, they've sold their financial or their physical possessions because they just didn't need them anymore. They downsized. And so some things were passed on. You know, I was able to get some things that were their earthly possessions. But when I think of their legacy, though, it's not a financial thing for them. It's not about the things that were passed down to me. It's more than just financial stuff. So a personal legacy is all about the actions that you take and how people will remember you. So when I think about my grandparents, I think about how my grandpa cared for his family. I think about how he loved having us around. I think about many times that we would be together and he would be starting to pray or talk before the meal and he would cry. He loved his family. And one of the things he did in his legacy is he showed us how to fully love your family, fully take care of your family. He showed us just how much he cared for us. So what are some ways that we can have a legacy, leave a legacy, if you will? So some of the things that I can think of for leaving a legacy that doesn't include financial things, because I think a legacy is more than just financial things. Your money is going to be gone. Money is going to be wasted away. The possessions that you get from people that get handed down are gonna rot. They're gonna be thrown away accidentally. My grandkids may not care the fact that I have something from my grandpa. They may see this whatever that my grandpa gave me and not think that it's important. So I don't want to just leave a legacy that's financial for my kids. I want to leave more than that. So some of the ways that we can do that are passing on your family's history. Tell your kids about you growing up, what you did, what your parents did, and their parents. Stories. Tell them your stories. You know, we always hear that. We walked uphill both ways in the snow to get to school. Well, that's not true, a true story. No one actually walked it uphill both ways to get to school. It's a start. We can start telling our stories to our kids now. Tell them about how when you were a kid, I I had this is a fun story for me. When I was a young kid, I had a Coke machine in my basement in my room. Um, I had lots of posters in my room, and I can tell my kids what posters that I had. I can tell them all of the fun things that made me me. The fun things that we did, like when going through a grocery store late at night with my dad, and just those memories that I have of him, and just how we would go. And one time we were in the grocery store, and he grabbed one of those pool noodles and turned around and whacked me with it. And like, it's a silly thing, but I'm telling my kids about it, and I'm telling them how the memories that I made with my dad, or the fact that we would a lot of times we would walk to church just because. And those things are things that stand out in my in my mind. So pass on your family's history. Tell your kids about you growing up, your parents growing up, their parents. Help pass down the stories. Don't worry if you don't think that your stories are that your stories are boring. Just because you don't think that you lived an exciting life doesn't mean that it's not exciting to others. Many people want to know the little fun things that you did. Also, take pictures. Tag pictures with people's names and keep a family tree. This is really important, and I think that this is really hard in our society with our digital society. I have a phone here, an iPhone, that I can snap every kind of picture. I can snap the food that I took. I can snap, whatever. I snap. There's my thousands of pictures on my phone. But it's important that we print these out, that we keep them, that we have them hanging up, that there's a place that future generations can have instead of just having a little black box of electronic pictures. Make sure that people have the photos that you take. Pass those pictures down and tag the pictures with people's names and their relationships. Because my kids may not understand who Becca Lehman is, or my kids' may not know who Becca Lehman is. It's my mom, but they may not know that. So what I can say is, this is Becca Lehman. She's Andy Lehman's mom. Things like that, so that future generations can look back and know exactly who it was. Also, keep a family tree so that you can look back and say, oh, Becca Lehman had, a son and a daughter, and this is their names, and they had these kids, so that future generations can look back and see just how important and people's names and where they fit into the story of who you are and who they are. The other thing that you can do is write down your family traditions. For us, one of our family traditions right now is going on Christmas Day to the cemetery with a cup of hot chocolate and visiting my daughter's resting spot, my kid's sister's resting spot, where her headstone is at. It's one of the traditions that we do. Write those traditions down so that future generations can look back and say, this is what the family did. This is what Andy did. This is who he was and what made him him. If you have a special skill, teach that to your kids, your grandkids, everybody. If you have a family recipe, write that down. You have a skill that can be taught to future generations. One of the things that one of my grandparents does is stain glass. I wish I would have taken the time to learn that as a hobby from him. Learn the knowledge that he had. He's still around, but he's not in a condition to really teach me about that right now. But if you have a special skill, teach that to your kids. They may not want it now, but they may look back and go, oh yeah, dad taught me this, or grandpa taught my dad who taught me this skill. If you have a family recipe, write that down. So my grandma makes, I think, the best snickerdoodle cookies. And my cousins and I have always said, we need to get grandma to teach us how to make these cookies. There's nothing special about them, but they taste different than any other snickerdoodle that I've ever had. And anytime I have a snickerdoodle, no matter whose it is, I think of my grandma. Pass that down to your kids, your grandkids, so that they can make these things and kind of keep remembering, oh, yes, this is who we are. And my great, great, great grandma made these cookies. Some other kind of simple things to kind of leave a legacy are things like be present, enjoy what's going on around you, engage in things. So many times these days, we have a phone in our hand. We're looking at Facebook, we're looking at Instagram, we're talking to people on there. Don't do that. Be present with what's going on right now so that people remember you for who you are, not just a head in a piece of plastic, head down looking at a screen. Be present, make memories. The other day, Julie and I could have sat and looked at our phones in the evenings. We do that sometimes, and our boys stay up later than our girls do, and sometimes we're each on our own devices or we're reading or whatever, which isn't bad in it of itself. But what we did the other night is one of my kids, Micah, my oldest, said, "Hey, Dad, Mom, can we play a game?" And so we got out Skippo and played Skippo. It was awesome. We made lots of really good memories. And the fun thing about that is I have memories of when I was their age playing Skippo with my grandpa. And I made sure to tell them that. I said, this is one of the things that when I play this game, I remember my grandpa Lehman. I remember playing with my sister and my grandpa Skippo every time we would go over there. It was a lot of fun. Pass those things down. You can be a mentor. Mentors are great. We, on the podcast, a couple of podcast episodes ago, we talked with John Kaufman, who is a big brother, and what he's doing for his little is teaching him about his things that are important to him. He's teaching them how it is. He's passing down these things to this mentor. It may not be actually, obviously in this case, he's a mentor not to his own biological kids, but somebody else's kids. He's being a mentor to, and helping them learn, things that are important. Another really good way to have a personal legacy is keeping a journal. And this is not only good for you to remember the things and monitor your thoughts and actions, but it's good for your family to look back and see what made you who you are. I'm not super great at this one myself, and I'm only really now starting to get into journaling and kind of keeping track of my thoughts and what's going through my brain. Today I'm actually listing out all of the things that I'm thinking out throughout the day, just so I can look back on a paper and say, hey, I can kind of monitor my thoughts. But also write out about your day. These things are good to look back on. As my kids get older, and my kids find my journals, find my wife's journals, looking back and realizing what we were praying for, things that we were going through, things that we were doing. It's good for people to be able to remember you for who you are through those journals. Living for others, not just for yourself, is so important too. It's a great way to make a legacy. And this goes a long way. This can be volunteering. This can be starting a nonprofit. This can be ways that you're living for others. And in living for others, you leave a legacy. Lots of times people remember people in the community for things that they did. And I'm not even talking financially. I'm not talking about like donating money, but I'm talking about living for others. Teaching them, starting nonprofits that can better your community. One of the other ways that is a really good way to leave a legacy and kind of start now is reflecting on and deciding what is important and what isn't important in your life. There are lots of things that we do that aren't important. Sure, sometimes sitting down and watching Netflix, that's great. It's fine to chill out. It's fine to have those times. But is it what's important? Can we cut those out? So sit back, decide what is and is not important in your life, and invest in the things that really matter. Now, this next thing and the last thing that I have to kind of leave a legacy is kind of one that I favor, and it's making audio and video recordings of yourself. So obviously you can tell that I like that because I talk for one of my hobbies. I do a podcast, obviously. That's why you're listening to this. But making it audio and video recordings, and this can be just, like I'm doing here. People can listen back and see how I thought, what my thoughts were, but also just even for your own family. So maybe you're not ever going to release these to the public, but make audio and video recordings so that your family can sit around the campfire, sit around at Thanksgiving, watch these videos, listen to these audio recordings, and say, hey, I remember when Grandpa Andy did that, or, that's really cool. That's really good to hear that because I didn't get a chance to meet Andy or whatever. Those things are really important. So I encourage you guys to take time, think about what's important to you and what you want to be remembered for. Leaving a legacy, you can start anytime. It's not ever too late to leave a legacy. You want people to remember you in a good way. Start that today. Work towards those things that are important for you and what you want to be remembered for. Guys, if you have feedback about this episode, I would encourage you to call our voicemail number, which is 574-213-8702, or you can send an email to feedback@dudesanddadspodcast.com. I really just thank you guys for being Patreon supporters of the show. We really couldn't do this without you. You guys just teach us. You guys help us to be able to continue on doing what we do. So I love producing these extra episodes for you that only you get. Thanks, guys. God bless. And until next time, grace and peace.
Be sure to share the podcast on your favorite social media channels.